Howdy, friends and floorheads. Happy Thursday night. It's time for some Malifaux on the channel. We are going to do yet another pool party. Now, if you've missed our first two, they were on Rezzers, and then we also did one on Bayou. And it's a different way to analyze a faction. But this time we're going to do it with a favorite of many, which is Neverborn. But first, let me quickly introduce my two experts that are going to help us out. Right above me is my good friend Ambrose. Ambrose has been on the show more than once, and you've heard his voice a few times. So Ambrose, thanks for coming, man.
It is a pleasure to be here.
All right, and just below me, we have a fellow podcaster and another good buddy of mine, Jeff Masker. Jeff, what's the best podcast about Malifaux right now?
I'm going to go with Tabletop Talk because I'm sitting here.
So after Tabletop Talk, what is your favorite?
If it's not Tabletop Talk, you definitely should listen to the Capital City Crew.
You guys do a really, really good job. Really good job. All right, so here's the idea. What I've tasked both Ambrose and Jeff with is something pretty simple. Hey, Wookie, how are you? Well, let's look at it this way. A lot of times when we look at a pool, we often say, okay, here's the pool. I wonder which master in my faction would do best in this pool. That's usually what you do when you're, doing a game with your buddies or when you're at a tournament. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, that's how we play the game. But for this exercise, we're doing something a little bit different. Instead of trying to find the best master for a pool, what we're going to do is find the best pool for each of these masters. So we've got all of the Neverborn masters. Each of them are going to be assigned a pool. So you can see the pools to my left. To my left on screen. So we've got a Turf War pool, a Ley Lines pool, a Symbols pool, and a Break the Line pool. Each of these have different schemes. So let's start with Titania. So Ambrose, when you look at Titania and you look at these four pools, where would you put Titania? Now, she might be good in all the pools, right? She might be a person or a master that you could potentially play in all of these. But if there's one of these four that you think she would do the best, which would it be?
So I dropped her in Break the Line. She's so good at research, both because, she's bringing underbrush. She really wants to hire the mysterious emissary. So right off the bat, you've got strap marker, underbrush, hungry land, and schemes if you need to drop them. Research mission is, I hesitate to say free points, but also, it's such a gimme when I'm looking for her best pool. That's on the list.
Is there one that was tempting? Yeah, second place pool.
Pool that was tempting. Yeah, all the other ones. I mean, that's my bias, though, right? I have more games with Titania than anybody else. I played her kind of as a solo master for a long time. I'm very comfortable with her. So she was one of my hardest picks because, I've put the practice in so that I can flex this about anything. And probably the other one I was looking at was Symbols, again, because it has research in there. And Break the Line one out for me because it does not have Assassinate. Now, she's great at doing it. She's resilient to it. But when it's not in the pool, she can be a bully, and I can put her in your face and force you to deal with her, and you're not getting points for that.
Now, Jeff, where did you end up putting Titania?
I actually put Titania in Turf War.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the big thing for me is her entire crew is very hardy. It's actually probably the most steadfast of all of the Neverborn. Their crew just does not die easily between hard to wound and armor. Titania's an incredible life pool. And then on top of that, when you're going to go select those markers, they don't have a whole lot of movement, but she can move around really well. And like I said, she's hard to take down. But the scheme pool itself, are we going over the schemes or just the strats right now?
Well, it's the whole pool, right? It's the whole pool.
In the schemes for Hidden Martyrs, you got Boltungan that are very cheap, so you can team them up with just about everything else in her crew. For the Hidden Martyrs section, catch and release, like I said, you have hardy minions. They can stand next to a henchman or a master easily and survive into the next round. For let them bleed. You can bring out the mysterious emissary to help to make hazardous terrain and get that ping damage going on it and spread them out. The new boar is just phenomenal at getting across the board and getting to where it needs to be, easily putting down terrain markers. I mean, it can move and go a good like 8-10 inches to another terrain marker. I mean, you place within 6, but you end up on the other end of the other side of it. So, and then with bait and switch, I just tag in the doppelganger for the lore and pull them over onto my side because they're already going to be kind of in that range already. So that's where I stuck her.
So I'd be curious, Jeff, what would help determine which schemes you would pick for this Turf War pool? So you say, okay, I'm bring Titania into this pool and I need to pick 2 schemes, right? You got to decide on your 2 schemes. What is the decision-making process? What are the factors that helps you narrow down from the 5 to the 2?
So I'm a big tournament player. I travel around to go to different tournaments and things like that. So with Neverborn, I look at things from a tournament standpoint. And with Neverborn, you can't just look at your own schemes. You have to look at what your opponent will be picking for schemes, because I believe that Neverborn, above all other factions, need to tech against your opponent, not just for what you're trying to do. So that would be a big determinant of whether, like, what is my opponent playing and what are they going to go after. And I may have to take in, if I think that they're going to be doing a lot of scheme things where they're putting down scheme markers, I'll take in somebody like Iggy, remove that scheme marker, and suddenly their whole plans were ruined in one turn. So things like that, those are the things that make me more decisive about where to play them.
So Ambrose, for you, let's look at that Turf War pool that Jeff picked here. And let's say that you're Jeff's opponent, right? So he's declared Titania, you've declared some other faction, and you know what this pool is. What would be your guess on the schemes that he would be taking, as well as Titania?
My first 2, I would be guessing Hidden Martyrs, Let Them Bleed as the first choices. The Life Leech, Queen's Command, and the blast damage that you're bringing in with Emissary, Let Them Bleed is probably the easiest scheme for her to score herself in there. And then you have a lot of good incidental picks with Hidden Martyrs, as Jeff was saying. So I think that just from an efficiency standpoint, that's going to work in her favor, and she's going to be able to focus on beating down. She herself is going to focus on beating down, and that's what you want to do with her. And those 2 schemes are going to, so that's what I would expect to see. Default, just knowing the master. Right. As Jeff was saying, there's a lot of tech pick that you could do in this pool, and if he comes in with Iggy, if he comes in with Rougarou, if he brings in Hinamatsu or Doppelganger, something with the lure, that's a pretty big indicator. So I think that those first 2 are the easy ones. The other 3 are possible, but I'm gonna know it if he wants to keep going.
I think Ambrose just hit a really good point for the listeners out there. You can glean a lot about what people picked for their strats and schemes by looking what they picked. Like, you can kind of make guesses as to that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, ask the question when you see their list, go why? Or you might see an odd model, right, that you're not used to seeing with that keyword, and go, oh, that's interesting. I wonder. I mean, let's assume that they're not an idiot like me, and they actually made a decision, right? They actually made a call on who they were going to take there. All right, Jeff. So let's move along to everybody's favorite girl, Miss Pandora. So of these 4 pools, which one do you think is the best for her?
So this was interesting. We talked a little bit about this ahead of time, but I was going to go with Break the Line for Pandora because it kind of devolves into a let's fight in the middle and get into it. but the break the line schemes were not very good for Pandora.
Yeah.
So I ended up putting her also in Turf War because once again, hey, let's fight in the middle because that's what we do when we're in Turf War.
Yeah.
And moving through the schemes for her, if I find her again, hidden martyrs, candy, and basically anything else that you're bringing into the crew. Because you're going to have to deal with Candy. You can't just leave her there. And if you do leave her there, then my other model that I teamed it with is around. Catch and release. Stars are amazing at doing it because at the last activation, they can just jump over to one of your models. For Let Them Bleed, she does ping damage. That is the name of the game for Let Them Bleed, and you can get it very easily. Spread them out. I wouldn't take it with her in this because it just wouldn't work out very well. And Bait and Switch, she already has lures built into her crew, so that's where I stuck her.
Excellent. How about for you, Ambrose? Well, first of all, before you give your pick, Ambrose, what do you think about Jeff's pick? Do you think that is legit?
Yeah, I had almost the exact same process as Jeff did. I was like, I don't mind. I like Break the Line. I like Ghost Swarms, but nothing else in that Break the Line pool works for her. The other two strategies are bad for her, especially the corner ley lines one. You don't want to be that far back. But they also have Assassinate, and I am looking for not Assassinate pools when I'm hiring Pandora.
So did you end up with the same pick as Jeff?
So
nice.
Same pick, Turf War, yeah. And for pretty much the same reasons, I think Let Them Bleed is that, like, ping damage is the name of the game. I think that scheme is almost an auto pick for Pandora into this pool. And then the other ones, as Jeff said, depending on what you're hiring, depending on what your opponent brings, you've got a lot of flexibility there at this declaration. The other thing I really like about Turf War is because Pandora is so control-oriented with aggressive force movement, with Misery, with the lures and all of this stuff, she can get a model into the quadrant she needs it to be in to kill it there. And that's a really nice tool to have in Turf War so that you can, again, similar to Titania, focus on beating down, which is what you want to do, but you're making it an efficient scoring conversion while you're at it.
Similar concept for you, Jeff. You're going up against Ambrose. He's declared, the pool. He's declared Pandora. Is there anything that you would bring in from a tech standpoint, or from a pick standpoint, or from a strategy on the table? Is there a way to potentially mitigate the Ambrose's ability to win with Pandora in this pool?
Things that ignore manipulative, just knowing Pandora right off the bat, she's got a lot of manipulative, a lot of things that put you on negative flip. So anything that has a positive flip to it, something like it is specifically Neverborn against Neverborn, Hinamatsu is going to rip through Pandora's crew. It's just what she does. So that'd be the first counter pick. And this group, because it's killing is Turf War is killing, I'm going to send her into the fray, and she does a lot of ping damage. You got to be careful with her because ping damage really hurts armored models, but Hinamatsu is a good pick for this. Plus she also has a lure that she can bring with her that helps you with some of these schemes.
Right, that makes a ton of sense. All right, Ambrose. Now, the next master, she is one that we said before we went live, of maybe the biggest generalist of a generalist faction, right? So let's talk about Zorida. Of these four pools, well, first of all, is she playable in all four of these pools? Yeah. So what is the best one for her?
Yeah, I think so.
She could only play in one of these. Where would you play her?
I did struggle with this one, and I have a fair number of games, but Zorida is not one of my core at the moment. I put her in the symbols pool, though. She can play pretty far back and is resilient to assassinate. And you're going to notice when I'm playing Neverborn and when I'm looking at pools, whether assassinate is in the pool or not drives my decision-making process a lot, as much as
and that's for the whole faction
a lot of times.
Why is that exactly? Is it just because it's the masters are so fragile, or
it's the masters are, they're not universally fragile, but I think that there are some winners and losers in your ability to survive an assassination run, and how many points you want to score off of that, right? So I think that Titania is a pretty good one for being able to both score it and survive it, but that's always a risky proposition. And so when I'm looking at the pool as a whole, I'm kind of thinking, do I want to score assassinate here? And if I do, that might drive me one direction. And if I don't want to score assassinate, then I want to be resilient to it. And that's what brought me to Zorida in this case. She can sit back, regret's a great trigger. If I'm going into a matchup where I can count on this being a melee engagement, then she's going to be very safe here. And I think that she has the tools to score any of these schemes. She's able to spread out very well. She has a lot of very fast models. She can, give that out of activation actions with obey, which makes scoring symbols so much easier. It makes spread them out so much easier. I think that this is probably the best bait and switch pool in here too. And again, that obey is really clutch for that, where someone comes over to your side to score a symbol and you obey them or ensorcel them or obey one of your guys over to them, and now that point's yours. You just pick the model that is going to be running their symbols. I think that's, unless they are not showing at all which model is their symbol runner, I think that bait and switch is a very safe pick in this pool.
Jeff, is assassinate as a scheme when it's in a pool, is it a huge factor in your decision making go forward as much as Ambrose is?
So sort of. There are some masters that I will just immediately be out if assassinate's in the pool, just because they are fragile. Interestingly enough, Zorida is not one of them. She is one of the best masters to bring into assassinate. But in general, you asked if the Neverborn masters are fragile. I'm going to amend that. Neverborn are fragile. They're not like a lot of, as a whole. There are some models that aren't, but as a whole, their faction is very fragile. They are very much get in quick and hurt things as much as possible very quickly. And that counterpunch can really hurt. If you fail going in, it's not going to be a good day for you.
Yep. All right. So where did you put Mama Z?
Oddly enough, I actually stuck her in the symbols pool as well. So I haven't, I usually reserve Zorida and play her a lot in tournaments because she's actually one of my most played masters, and there haven't been a lot of tournaments lately, so they may have changed this. But the last time I looked, it was friendly controlled model picks up a symbol. So unless it's changed, I can obey your own model to go pick up the symbol on the other side of the board. So you can't leave a model within movement range of the symbols to guard them. Also, similar to Ambrose was. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That has changed. You can't.
I figured it would.
Obey.
It was pretty damning.
Too cheesy.
Yeah, but one of the things that I've done last time I was playing in Nova, Dead Rider was coming across the board. Obviously, he was going to be their symbols runner, and she just double obeys him to walk, charge back into the crew, into the deployment zone, and then take something else with it to the back of the deployment zone. She's just amazing at all of these. She's amazing in the game in general. One of my favorite masters. But for research, you've got the Groot Sling and Waldgeists that are making the markers for you. For bait and switch, you've got Silurids that can jump in at the end of the turn. For assassinate, I don't even need to go into that. She's hard to assassinate, and then doing assassinate, I can obey. A model can go in, a big beater can go in, and then I can make an attack 2 more times. Like you're going to be able to take out most things with that. Claim jump, you can just about obey anyone as the last activation in order to get claim jump. They can be a good 12 inches away from the middle of the board, and then as last activation, Zorida goes, all right, walk twice, he's there, and you never saw it coming. So spread them out. You've got Silorids. Like, she's just, this whole pool was made for Zorida. She's excellent at it.
Very cool. All right, so speaking of glass, oh, go ahead.
You mentioned, oh, sorry. Well, you mentioned obeying the dead rider, and I think that this pool is very space focused, right? We've got the spread and the claim jump and the, even research mission. It cares about where models are. Symbols cares about where models are, and she's just in charge of that for both players, and that is a huge advantage going.
All right, so
pool.
Jeff, speaking of glass cannons, let's talk about Nekima. Where did she end up of these 4 pools?
I call her Nekima. Apparently, I didn't graduate high school education, but I put Nekima in ley lines.
Oh, okay. So our first ley lines pick. Okay, and why is that? Why was that, of all the other 3, this one was your favorite? Because
her crew is incredibly fast. They're very, very killy, and the corner deployment is not as big of a deterrent as a lot of other things. Along with that, the schemes, I might bring the rider in order to do breakthrough if I felt like doing breakthrough. Or young Nephilims can also do it. She's very good at assassinate. You just have to be careful with her because she can also be assassinated back. But the black blood splash helps out a lot. For deathbeds, the same thing. She's very good at killing things. Like spread them out. Young Nephilim can do it, and outflank also. Young Nephilim can do it. I don't think outflank's a very good option because they're kind of stuck out there. But out of all the things that you can bring, her crew is incredibly fast. They can get to the corners, drop those markers, and then be back in the next turn doing damage. So it's basically the speed was all that I was looking for here.
So Jeff, had I made a different one corner, would that have moved? Was it would you have changed your mind? Or was it everything else and corner was the icing?
It was mostly the corner deployment itself.
Gotcha.
The movement. Her crew was just so fast that while my opponent is still setting up and trying to get into position, she's already killing you, and it's excellent.
Very, very nice. Ambrose, where did you put our big sworded lady?
I dropped her in turf war.
Why is that?
So I kind of the opposite, or the invert, not the opposite, but verse, because standard is so close. The threat range that Nekima is projecting really restricts your opponent's ability to unpack. They're not going to be able to advance up the board without losing something, and so before initiative, you've already established control over a huge swatch of the board. She loves Let Them Bleed because the black blood, she wants to kill stuff. Black blood's going to splash out and damage a lot. Catch and release is her jam. The matures, like, it just needs to be a minion. So you want to come in with that per planted next to their master, kill their master, run away. and in terms of survivable minions for catching, I'm pretty sure you can drop it on them. They are youngs would also work. They've got good options there. Let's see. I checked in with the expert Andre and was like, "This is where I'm dropping Nekima here," and he gave 2 thumbs up. And his comment was that he also likes this because of the opponents it produces, with some of the speed, and scheming with spread them out and switch that's here. You might just luck into a really sweet matchup where they're bringing something fast and schemy and you're fast and killy and you can just roll over.
And you bring up an important point, Ambrose, which is, obviously her power is in her ability to take models off the board, but a lot of her power is the threat of taking models off the board. And anytime that you are doing things or bringing something that is in any way leaning on the decision-making process of your opponent, that is a step forward. That is putting you ahead of the game because you are limiting options, which you could make an argument that that is the key to winning the whole freaking game, is limiting the options and making your opponent choose between two bad choices. Jeff, what do you think about that Turf War pick?
Nekima is never bad into turf war because killing things is always fun, and let them bleed. Nekima can accomplish very easily. Hidden martyrs, you can stick it on you can even do 7, 14. Yeah, that wouldn't work. Young Nephilim, and then some doesn't matter, something else, and you're not going to leave a young Nephilim just onslaughting you over and over. So you're going to have to kill it. Right. Like when it gets in the middle of your crew, bait and switch. In general, she's good in she's good in a lot of things. So it's never a bad thing to consider Nekima. But for me, just looking at these pools and figuring out which master was best, that corner really got me. And I do want to throw this out there: if you are playing Nekima into ley lines, not just Nekima, any model with flight, because you can't place, you cannot use flight. So because it's a place, so you have to move normally, and you can move normally, but when you move normally, you still encounter severe terrain and things like that. So just keep that in mind when you are playing with ley lines and a ball carrier with flight.
Yeah, very, very important. Ambrose, let's talk about the newest member of Neverborn. Let's talk about Mr. Marcus.
Mr. Marcus. This is another one. Not a ton of reps. I've played against Marcus a fair amount, but not a ton on my side of the table. I did end up dropping him in Turf War, and I'm willing to admit that might be a little bit of inexperience with him. But I know he's got out of activation movement and a general offensive line. So being able to shuffle around the Turf War quadrants, get my models where they're safe from flipping my markers, be able to get them to where they can kill effectively. He's got some very good targets for catch and release. Let them bleed is great. He's got some good targets for martyrs. So I felt like this was a pretty safe place for him to excel. When I was analyzing him, I was impressed with the versatility he brings. And I know that there's like the Slate Ridge Maulers, aren't, rock stars out in the, internet talk, but you buff them up and give them, they have, I think they have Laugh Off, right? You buff them up defensively. Yep. They make awesome ball carriers. So I was considering dropping him over there for that reason. I think he's got a lane in this suite, but ultimately Turf War was the one that I was just grokking best.
How about for you, Jeff? Where did Mr. Marcus end up?
I stuck Marcus in actually the exact same Steam Pool in Turf War.
Nice.
Basically, he can make whatever model he wants to be tanky. The Slate Ridge Mauler, which I don't know why it gets such a bad rap on the internet.
Have they not heard of Bear Force One? I mean, come on.
Travis Wayforth, shout out. But hard to wound and armor together. Anyone that's played against Titania or anything else that Von Stuck, like hard to wound and armor together is a great combination. Yeah. And he can give armor to a Slate Ridge Mauler, and it becomes this like immovable force that just stands there. And then Miranda can come up and heal it anytime that it needs to. Plus, I think it has a discard to heal itself, and forgot the name of the ability. But in general, though, Marcus Hidden Martyrs, he's got you can do a Moldman and an Adzi, which you cannot do with Arcanist Marcus, which is one of the reasons why the Adzi is one of the most defensive models in the game.
Interesting.
You can make it to where it has the camouflage ability where you can't target it outside of 6 inches, and if you end your movement too close to it, you gain distracted. You stick that on it, and you stick armor on it or butterfly jump, and it is just an insanely defensive model. So you team that up with something innocuous like a mole man, and that's a pretty good combination to have there. Catch and release, a saber tooth does that easily. Just jump over you and walk over to your opponent at the end of the turn. With let them bleed, go kill things with Marcus is what you do. He's really good at killing things. With spread them out, you got Sabretooth or the new Eagles that can get over and do spread them out pretty easily. And then bait and switch. I gotta call out my boy Kojo here. He can throw a model up to 10 inches. So
his throw is disgusting.
Like if you get anywhere near that center line, he's just gonna walk over and throw you to the other side of the line and be like, "All right, bait and switch, done, thanks." Like, yep. And I'm gonna also give it. It's not in the scheme pool, but give him a shout out for claim jump as well, because at the end of the turn, he can just walk into the middle of the board and use his push ability on everybody, and boom, claim jump, done. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yep. All right, so let's shift gears. Let's talk about Mr. Lucius, Jeff. So of all these 4 pools, where do you think Lucius shines the brightest?
I think this one's going to be my controversial pick. I picked ley lines for Lucius.
Interesting. And why is that?
Because of that corner deployment. Lucius is the other very fast member of the Neverborn, and he can move very quickly up the board and get his crew very quickly up the board, and corner becomes less of a problem. What he also has interesting things with when you're doing ley lines, ball tricks. Like you may think the ball carrier is stranded, and suddenly you're like, nope, good lawyer, pass the ball over to there. Like you get lots of obey actions and things like that. For breakthrough, I'm probably going add a keyword in order to do it. Assassinate, Agent 46 is very good at killing things, especially with the new Lucius, but that's not what we're talking about right now. For deathbeds, you've got draw out secrets. Deathbeds just becomes incredibly easy with draw out secrets. Spread them out. You can obey others to do spread them out for you. So I kind of lean heavily into obeys. And for outflank, I wouldn't take it because outflank is bad.
So when we think about Lucius, obviously he and Zorida are not the same, right? But the ability to cause out of activation actions are the same between the two of them. Do you think Lucius is as versatile as Zorida?
No.
And why is that?
So number one, Zorida has a lot more range than Lucius does because she can cast through others. Right. Number two, it's not limited to one action. I can use Ensorcel once per turn, so I can make you take 2 actions. So in the case of Lucius, what I mentioned before, that tournament game that I was playing with Zorida, I would not have been able to obey the Dead Rider, but I can obey the Dead Rider to walk and then charge. And a lot of people don't expect a 14-inch movement from their, going back into your deployment zone with their ball carrier. So there are some big differences. The place where Lucius kind of balances that out is his card hand or his hands that he has, because he has so much card draw. So he usually and his models are fairly, I know it's going to sound weird, but they're fairly defensive. If you can get things tied down into his little web of negative willpower duels, it works out a lot better.
Yep. How about you, Ambrose? Where did Lucius end up for you? Of all the 4 pools, where do you think he is best?
I dropped him in Break the Line. And this is another one where I'm really, really looking for not assassinate. And after that, I'm looking for words. I'm looking for detonate charges and bait and switch in this packet are his favorite schemes. And since those weren't paired up, I kind of had to pick one. And I leaned towards Break the Line because it's a little less killing focused, which, can be his weakness. As he's got good defensive tech in that's based around, getting your opponent on negative flips and taking advantage of your card advantage to, pressure their hand if they want to force any damage through. But that is a fragile web, right? Like once those cards start falling, they can fall really fast. I like his out of activation obeys a
Mhm.
lot in Break the Line. Also, I also like this lateral spread out instead of deep spread out. So I enjoy the fact that Break the Line has us spreading out
Interesting. Yep.
lengthwise across the center line instead of this attempt to go deep. And so I think Breakthrough, with his ability to move his own models around and again, draw out secrets, Breakthrough in flank is a lot easier to do than in corner, and I don't have to necessarily reach out of keyword to do that. Although Neverborn does have good out of keyword options, so if you bring Hooded Rider to do Breakthrough, you're not wrong. I think he can score detonate charges better than anyone in the faction, and that's something that oftentimes people overlook because it's not super efficient. You have to be able to drop scheme markers in where the action is happening, and so for a lot of people, they just assume, hey, this isn't on the table because detonate's hard. But it is very much a live scheme for Lucius, and his own aura. I think it's it doesn't come into play very often, but I think it's subterfuge where they drop a scheme, you can discard a card, you get a scheme instead. That's another piece that pretty much locks them out of doing detonate if they're to come into where the action is happening to scheme.
Hey, Santa Claus. Yeah, we're only doing the original titles. We're not doing the secondary titles. That'll be another segment. So all of these decisions that both Ambrose and Jeff are making are based off of the original flavor, not the new flavor for each of these masters. All right, Ambrose, let's talk about Euripides. Euripides is tough, right? He can he can be so good in the right pool, and he can be terrible in the wrong pool. So I'd be of the four here, where do you think he would just really shine?
I dropped him in Break the Line as well. And this is very similar to Titania. He is a pretty good assassinator, right? I can use his big damage track and his intuition to come in and put down some serious damage on the opponent's master. But if I'm going that route, I'm locked into that route. And he can be a wrecking ball that, in addition to this, beat down that he can unleash himself, he's got a lot of control elements. So he's going to be able to start exerting control over the board and exerting beatdown pressure quickly. Flank is nice where you have the option of deploying forward if you want to exert some early pressure and start getting pillars across the board. You have a lot of agency over where you start setting up that ice fortress. But if it's a matchup that doesn't support that early aggression, you can also play back in the the corner of the L and start from there and play a slower rampy style game. Research missions in here, so like Titania, that's kind of free. I think he has a couple of good options for catch and release. I like the Gigants for that, with their Shattering Surprise. If you're and watching your discard pile carefully, it's very in the realm of possibility to jump one of those in at the end of the turn to a nice pillar, jump them back out, start of the next turn. They can continue to exert pressure from the edges because they've got their gun, and they can lock down interacting through ice pillars, which is phenomenal and Break the Line. If there's this one Break the Line marker in a corner, you don't necessarily have to send a model over to still stop your opponent from shooting across the board.
How about for you, Jeff? Where did big base Euripides end up?
I actually put him into symbols, which might sound a little odd at first, but if you have the right board set up for
Jeff,
him,
you have got the worst mic, buddy.
Oh, do I?
There you go. All right. Yeah, it's obviously voice activated and it's having a hard time. All right, go ahead. So where did you put him?
I put him into symbols.
Okay.
So in general, I know that might seem a little odd, but if you have the right board set up for it, you can place your symbols where they're blocked on two sides by like a building or something along that line. And then Euripides can place ice pillars on the other side of it to where when you bring your scheme runner across, you now have to remove the ice pillars before you can actually get to the symbol.
Interesting.
He also has a couple of other interesting plays in there. He's got some movement shenanigans, so he can have people teleport across the board with Shattering Surprise. He can also teleport across the board. For research, or research mission. Obviously, it's a gimme with him. For bait and switch, I'd bring the doppelganger along for being able to mimic Thune's actions as well as being able to lure.
Yeah.
Assassinate. He's Euripides. He can kill things pretty easily, but something that a lot of people don't play and don't realize is if your master is buried at the end of the game, it counts as being killed. So if I run Thune over after your master's activated and I bury you, he's automatically assassinated.
Interesting.
For claim jump, nobody likes getting near Thune, and if you do, he can turn you into an ice pillar. So sticking him in the middle or a Garyon in the middle, and people don't generally want to go there. And for spread them out, you've got the dam that can jump across the board and drop scheme markers. Like he's pretty good for the pool.
Yep. How about? Yeah. I was going to ask
This was my number 2 pick.
I can definitely see both of these, and I think that the justifications for both are there. All right, so for the weakest master in the entire faction, Dreamer, right? Let's talk about Dreamer, Jeff, who is not the weakest master. Where did you put Dreamer?
I had to stick Dreamer and break the line. And the reason why is, first of all, you can take Doppelganger into here so that it can just walk up as Don't Mind Me. It can move those markers. But he has model superiority, which is like, and break the line. If I make more models than you, I have more activations. I can keep pushing things further than you can. For breakthrough, he's got Insidious Madnesses, Capellius, the Widow Weaver, and the Bandersnatch, which are all incredibly fast. They can jump around. They can get to the other side of the board quickly. For detonate charges, he's got models that have hole in the world. He's got the Doppelganger that can stick a ski marker next to you, and the general just flood of models that can place markers wherever they need to. Catcher and Release and Insidious Madnesses are very good at it because they are one of the best minions in the game, hands down. Research mission, he's got web markers in his crew that can make them so that you can get research mission well. And for outflank, if he needs to, he's probably in the best position to do outflank, even though it's not very good, because he has so many models at his disposal that he can just be like, yeah, I don't need those two, go to the edges.
Right. Yep. So obviously there's a ton of factors involved here, Jeff, but just generally speaking, what are the 2 schemes that you would likely pick if you're bringing Dreamer into this?
I would probably do breakthrough and research mission, because I want to be pushing things on your side of the board and sticking web markers over there to get my Widow Weaver and Bandersnatch over on. You got to be careful with the Bandersnatch. He's very easy to kill. But I'm already putting markers on that side, and then I can jump them one of them over into your deployment zone afterwards. And it's just they flow like I'm pushing things there, and when I get there, I'm putting down turf or markers that I want, and then I can jump into your deployment zone. So it's a flow of the game.
Yep. All right, Ambrose, where did the Dreamer end up?
So I draw in corner or ley lines, and the part of that is definitely because with the summoning token changes in GG2, ley lines is the only strat now where summons can still effectively score it, and you're bringing Dream. That's a thing that's going to happen. He's not bad at any of the other pools because of that. It just is another part of the game that he's going to be able to take advantage of with his kit. Very similar to what Jeff was saying about Lucius. Dreamer has a crew that can very quickly move up the board together with all the lead nightmares, with Dreamer's bonus action. Frightening Reminder on Capellius, things like this. You're fast enough, you're incorporeal, so the terrain's not going to slow you down. You're not impeded in any way by the corner deployment. Deathbeds with the webs for the same reason as research mission. I agree with Jeff that if anybody can score outflank, Dreamer's the one who can. I also think that Dreamer has corner breakthrough is hard, right? but with the ability to summon an Insidious Madness, drop it in their backfield, it does what it needs to, and then it runs off in the final turns of the game into the opponent's corner. He's got I'd say easier than average time at tackling that scheme in this deployment zone without flexing too far out of what his normal plan is. The very last thing I want to mention about this pool is that Dreamer's another one where I specifically am looking for Assassinate. And Dreamer's hard to kill. He's killable, but he's hard to kill. And now that Vivid Nightmares is on front of Dreamer's card, making your crew worse, I like to get my deck as hot as possible with Vivid Nightmares in existence, and then I want to take Dreamer, I want to shove him into your crew with his Diversion Aura, engage some stuff. He's got Serene Countenance, and I want to dare you to kill him. Either you have to deal with Diversion, you have to deal with my Incorporeal, my engagement, or if you get rid of him, my entire crew suddenly goes back to hot deck nightmare mode, right? And it puts you in a really bad spot. Diversion is such a powerful aura. It can just completely shut models down. And if you want to see Archie cry, go engage in the Dreamer.
So here's something that's interesting. Compared to the Rezer pool party and the Bayou pool party, I think we saw the biggest difference between our two guests here. And the other ones, we saw a lot of common picks. In fact, it was really rare where the two guests would pick different things. And I think that is less of a reflection of Ambrose and Jeff looking at the game different. I would argue it's the versatility of the crew, of the faction, right? Because really, I think you could make an argument for, at least 3 of each of these pools for each of these masters. So you're getting down to less obvious, this is the obvious pool. You have to do a whole level of thought to really make these picks. So as the margin of differences gets smaller, that allows the two of them to make slightly different picks, more influenced by their style as opposed to just being really obvious. All right, so I want to talk. Let's talk ley lines now. Obviously, Ambrose, you only picked Dreamer, so Dreamer is your top pick for ley lines. Jeff, between Lucius and Nekima, who would you bring into this pool?
Nekima.
All right. So those are our top picks for ley lines. Going down to break the line. Obviously, Dreamer for Jeff. Between Titania, Lucius, and Euripides, Ambrose, who is your top pick?
I would go to Titania, and that's familiarity, right? I think that she's just going to be my strongest pick of those 3. Euripides is a close second, but I think that Titania is a little bit better at the strategy than Euripides is. So
all right, so Ambrose is going to have Zorida into symbols because that was his only master that he picked for that pool. How about for you, Jeff? Between Zorida and Euripides, who would you bring into the symbols pool?
Zorida. She just controls your enemy. Like, it's not just can I accomplish these schemes? She also messes with your opponent. Like, hands down, it's the best option for a huge differential.
Got it. All right, so now the tough one, because this is where we saw the most picks for Neverborn, which really doesn't surprise me being as killy as it is. Let's start with you, Jeff. Between Pandora, Titania, and Marcus, who would you ultimately pick for Turf War?
This one is a hard one. Oddly enough, I would probably go with Marcus, actually.
Wow. Really? Why is that?
Because of the scheme pool that's there. And Turf War is already going to be good for him, but because the schemes that are there with bait and switch and catch and release, and his crew being fast for the leaps and spread them out, in general, I think he probably fits it better. My second choice, like the big thing is it was between Marcus and Pandora. And I think with particularly catching somebody by surprise with bait and switch and throwing them across the board with Kojo is going to be something that people are like, I did not see that coming. So I think that's a big one.
All right, Ambrose, between Pandora, Nekima, and Marcus. Who's your top pick?
I think I would go with Nekima. I think that she is. I like Pandora. I'm more comfortable with Pandora, to be honest. Like, Pandora is my comfort pick, but I think that she is most likely of anybody that we're showing here in Turf War to sort of get a bad matchup. And especially in a killy pool, trying to avoid that. If you come into a bad beatdown matchup with Nekima, I'm not sure if that's possible, but if you were to, her backup plan speed, which is also very much rewarded in here. The Kojo bait and switch thing I wasn't originally thinking about when I was declaring things in here, and I really like that. So, hearing Jeff talk about Marcus, I like that option a lot, but I'm kind of splitting the difference between what I think the pool's best at and my comfort level. And
so now we're in a situation where we've got three masters picked twice, right? So we've got Zorida picked by each of them as the best in the pool and in that same symbols pool. We've got Dreamer picked by both Jeff and Ambrose as best, and we've got Nekima picked as best. So, Jeff, do you think that the top tier masters overall are Nekima, Zorida, and Dreamer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would. No, I know that Andre is going to disagree with me, but I would rank them probably Zorida, Dreamer, Nekima in that order. But that's because I love Zorida. Her obeys are just phenomenal, and the way that I like to play is I like to mess with my opponent's crew, and she does it the best. Dreamer took a bit of a hit, but I still think he has one of the best crews out there. And Nekima, the problem with Nekima is she can run into bad matchups. And like sometimes that's not a good thing. If you see Nexus across the board from you, it can be a really bad day for you. So that's why I dropped her to 3. But yes, I think these are the top 3.
Do you think they're the strongest 3, Ambrose?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I'm weighing, like, I want to squeeze Titania in there, but I don't think so. Like, I think, like, I just don't think she's quite, she's not quite as versatile, and she is action starved. And none of those other 3 masters are action starved. And Nekima, it mostly comes down to efficiency and speed, but that's part of having enough actions, and that's how you
look. If Neverborn could get a model that handed out fast, like so many of these lesser masters like Titania would become so much better. But fast is very hard to come by in Neverborn.
Well, and so I hear talk Neverborn is, the weakest faction, yada yada. I've heard that rumbled about, which obviously I don't buy into, but I will make a contention. I'd be curious to know, Jeff, if you agree with this. I think as a faction, right? So obviously individual keywords change things, but as a faction, I feel like there is a higher learning curve or a higher skill level needed to be successful. But if you have that higher skill level and familiarity in this faction, you can be devastating. Do you think that that's an accurate capture of Neverborn or no?
It is. I think in general, you can't just rely on what you're doing. You have to account for what your opponent's doing and tech against, not just tech. You have to plan your moves to figure out not just how you're going to accomplish your schemes, but how you're going to stop your opponent. The big problem with Neverborn in general is they're scheme runners. All of these masters that we talk about, like when you talk about Dreamer or Zorida and Lucius, they're really good scheme runners, are out of faction. They're still in keyword, but they are out of faction for them. So Neverborn doesn't have models that can instantly drop down 2 scheme markers and then erase another one from across the board later. They don't have a cheap scheme runner that can leap across the board and drop multiple scheme runners. Even Marcus, the Sabretooth that I mentioned, out of faction. You can't bring it with these other crews. So that's a big place where the Neverborn suffer. So to make up for that, you have to stop your opponent from scoring the point, because you don't have as much action efficiency in actual schemes, like doing scheme running. So you have to account for what your opponent's doing and try to stop that so they're not as efficient at what they're trying to do. And you do have things that can do that. Stuff like Iggy, where I'm like, hey, I can go fast, walk 10 inches, and then remove a scheme marker, and all that work that you just put in is just completely erased. But those are things that you have to account for when playing Neverborn.
Do you think it's a high skill requirement faction, Ambrose?
Yeah, yes-ish. I think that it's I think it's objectives score the game, and like Jeff is saying, we don't have a lot of shortcuts for doing that, for putting points down, right? And another thing that Jeff mentioned is that we have to counter what our opponent's doing, and kill their models. I think for every master here except for Lucius and sometimes Zorida, the default win condition is I kill enough stuff that you can't score effectively so that I can score, so that I win based on the points that I'm going to be able to do. And a lot of times that's not 8 points. The wrench that goes into that is that we're an aggressive faction that doesn't have a lot of ways around defensive tech. There's some, and some of that's there is very good, but we don't have a lot of point and click, ignore armor, point and click, ignore hard to kill, point and click. We have the rider who has ruthless and not a lot of other ruthless options. So these are things where you have to get over those sort of barriers with the core mechanics of the game, not with an ability that says
right
you get through. And so you're relying on positioning, right? They're fast, and we're mobile, and so this is where not even just teching against your opponent, but getting your models in the right position on the board so that they're set up to safely take something out, becomes very important. And our superstars like Dreamer have the ability to play this offensive game. Well, they also have a very grindy, attrition-y crew, right? Like Insidious Madnesses and Stitched and Dreamer himself. There's just so many little stacking defensive abilities on those models that they're playing a long game. But at the end of the day, the game is still kill and tie up your stuff so you can't score. And then I'll clean up.
Hey, Bastards of the Universe, thanks for the raid and bringing everybody here. We're talking Malifaux right now. Unfortunately, we're wrapping up here pretty soon, but I appreciate you bringing everybody by. So, Ambrose, do you have any shout outs or plugs that you want to get out there?
So I have been a part of, or last year I was a part of the World Series for Malifaux that happens on Vassal. And we are just kicking off our second season, 2022 Malifaux World Series. There's a link to all the info on the Wyrd forums. So we're trying to double down. It was a huge success. We had like 130 some people, different people playing over the course of all these events. We had those were people from like 25, 30 different countries. And that was way more than we thought. We thought it was going to be like 20, right? Like we're going to have these 20 people who are always playing Vassal. We're going to see them. And it was way more than that. So we're continuing that. We just posted the first event, and registration for that is open until the 15th. If you haven't tried Vassal, you should. It's a cool way to play Malifaux online, and the World Series is an opportunity to meet and play with some of the best.
So which country won the last one? And
Russia.
Is Russia the favorite going into this one?
Probably. They've got a lot of very strong players, right? I mean, you know, the reputation of Russians being chess carries over, right? Malifaux is chess plus, and these guys don't mess around, and they play good stuff.
I'd like to see Texas actually show up this time, not fold like a bunch of paper tigers.
Hey, they were up there in the top. Don't
they underwhelmed. They did not meet expectations at all. Jeff, tell me about your podcast.
Podcast is called Capital City Crew. It's definitely we do reviews. I'm sorry,
lost Jeff.
Yeah, I've got him though. You're good, Ambrose.
Okay, Capital City Crew. Good podcast. We review masters, go into details of tech picks and good things to bring with those masters. I also want to plug the Captain Con for my friends up in Massachusetts. It's coming up beginning of February, so if you can make it out, I will be there. Owen Best will be traveling with me, and several other podcasters. So definitely going to be a good time. Hopefully COVID holds off and doesn't get any worse. It's getting pretty bad now, but if you can make it out, that would be a fun time.
Yeah, that is an event that I've always wanted to go up to. I've always heard good things. Everybody I've talked to over the years has said it's a good time, and then what they're doing with it this time, I think, is really neat. Well, guys, I appreciate you coming on and spending time with me. And for those of you that watch live and were in the chat, it was great seeing all of you. If you're watching this live on Twitch, go ahead and hit follow for me. If you want to sub, I'd appreciate it. If you're watching this later on YouTube, go ahead and give me a subscribe. It's free, and a like and a